Welcome back to my channel, everyone. Hi, I'm Stephanie Bree, and today I'm tackling a controversial subject, as I often do on this channel, based on the comments I get. This is my take on Jaws. Specifically, if Jaws isn't the first blockbuster movie, then what is? Obviously, if I'm going to talk about this, I kind of sort of have to define what I think a blockbuster is. Because the term blockbuster is ambiguous and can defy definition, much like the term horror is. And I have a whole channel where I talk about horror movies. So, all right, here's the thing. For me, I studied film in college, and in film school, they will tell you Jaws is the first blockbuster, and their evidence is Jaws came out in the summer, and it was a big hit, and it started the whole summer blockbuster phenomenon. So, to its credit, it does deserve at least to be recognized as the first big summer hit, I will say. The first big hit summer movie. Because before then, the big blockbusters came out in Christmas time. That's when the big movies were released. They were the big family movies and whatnot. However, by and large, if you look at the history of Hollywood, the term blockbuster tends to be applied to, which also happens to be the biggest movies that we classify as blockbusters, tend to be big action adventure, family friendly, multi-genre films, meaning that you can't really just slap a label on them. That's why we call them blockbusters, because they are literally just blockbusters. That's their genre. That is their genre. They're action movies, but they're also adventure movies, but they're also horror movies, but they're also kids movies, but they're also love stories. They're just movies. That's the thing about blockbusters. They're the very definition of a film, a cinema, a story. It's literally, everything plus the kitchen sink. That's what a blockbuster is. That's not Jaws. That is absolutely not Jaws. Jaws is a horror movie, straight through. It's a family-friendly horror movie, I will admit. Absolutely. But there's no debating Jaws is a horror movie. Absolutely. If you're debating it, I don't want to talk to you about it. No, I'm not interested. Oh, sure, leave a nasty comment if you want, but I'm not going to respond. Just so you know. That being said, the reason why I don't classify Jaws as a blockbuster is it just doesn't have enough other genres. Horror, yes. Is it a summer movie? Okay, fair enough. It is. It is a family vacation movie, sure. But, not really any comedy to speak of, no real action adventure to speak of. There's no real, like, I don't know. I mean, to me, a blockbuster has to be something that just checks so many boxes that it has mass appeal by default. And Jaws just happened to be successful despite the logic saying it wouldn't be, because Jaws is like a shark movie. It's a killer shark movie. It's the first killer shark movie, obviously. Well, it may not be the actual first. I don't know 100% on that, so don't quote me. But it's obviously the first successful one, at the very least, and it's the one we talk about. But to me, when I'm looking at the other movies we call blockbusters, Jaws just doesn't fit that template for me. It just doesn't. So, what would be the first summer blockbuster then, if it isn't Jaws? And I think this is an easy answer. It's obviously Star Wars. So I think it's more fair to say Star Wars is the first summer blockbuster, which Star Wars only came out a year after Jaws. So Jaws was the proto-blockbuster, I'll say. It was the first movie to say, we can make big summer movies and then get away with it. And society was like, oh, sure, that's a good time to have your movie. Because Star Wars was supposed to be a Christmas movie, but then they realized, hey, if Jaws can have success in the summer, why can't we? And so they pushed it back to the summer. which was a good thing because they needed more time. Because if you've ever studied the history and the production of Star Wars, they probably needed 3 more months than what they actually got. And, this is evidenced by the fact that George Lucas kept tinkering with these fucking movies until he finally threw his hands up and sold it all off to Disney. So, Star Wars. It checks more of the boxes. Action adventure, check. Fantasy, sci-fi, check. Family friendly, check. Love story, check. Comedy, check. It just checks more boxes than Jaws does. And Star Wars, Jaws may have inspired Hollywood executives to realize, yes, society wants to see big budget summer movies in May and June and July. But Star Wars is the one that gave you the roadmap of what a blockbuster should look like. Since Jaws came out, nothing, not one summer blockbuster has come out that copycats its formula. The closest you get is Jurassic Park, which is also made by Steven Spielberg, by the way. That's as close as you get. Everything else that we call a summer blockbuster has way more in common with Star Wars than it does Jaws. The Terminator movies, the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, the Batman movies, the fucking Aliens, RoboCop. These movies all have more in common with Star Wars than they do Jaws. Even fucking Independence Day, which is decidedly a summer blockbuster, is just ripping off A New Hope. It's a more realistic take on the same story. It's essentially A New Hope, just modernized a little bit. Even Indiana Jones is more Star Wars than Jaws. And, of course, Indiana Jones was also Steven Spielberg. E.T. is more Star Wars than Jaws. What we think of when we think the word summer blockbuster, we think of movies like Star Wars. We do not think of movies like Jaws. Lake Placid was not a summer blockbuster. Fucking Anaconda was not a summer blockbuster. Those were big movies in their own rights to that respective audience, but they weren't summer blockbusters. And I just think it's more fair and more accurate to give Star Wars the credit of being the first summer blockbuster than it is Jaws, because Jaws, while it deserves credit for opening the door for summer blockbusters, sure, I'll admit, I just don't think in the strictest sense it is itself a blockbuster. So that's my take.